Hi, everybody. Dhaman Mehta here, and thank you for once again joining me on my journey as I go through my favorites list on fanfiction.net. Let's just dive in with 7 stories, starting with Dragon Emperor of the Heavenly Storm by Dragon Liege 242. This is a high school DxD story that has removed the perversion from the story, which just leaves an okay supernatural fantasy shonen series with the OP protagonist. Um, there's a bit of a change into the lore where Issei as a kid meets Ophis, and she just he grows up with her, and so he's already got girlfriend whatever, and then also his parents are now gods of the Shinto thing or something. So he's now just also a super demigod, and he's got all that. But it's just without the perversion. It was boring. I got bored really really fast. Uh, the actual pace of this story moves pretty quickly, and it goes from the start of the show to the peace conference in 5 chapters. But it only does this because Issei is super OP, so he just steamrolls the fights, and we don't see any non-plot significant character interaction between anybody. Like it's super just is this does this conversation or this interaction have to do relatively with the plot? No, then who cares? Any conversation with Rias, no, that's not important. It's just which is the conversation that has Riser the declare the wedding. Okay, that's the one conversation that's there, and then jump to the fight. It has no interactions with the characters as characters or stuff, and things Issei loves Asia or Ophis and stuff, and we love it. There's no evidence of this aside from the author just saying when conversation will come with oh yeah, Asia, I still love Asia, but honestly Asia herself, aside from the one meeting where Asia Issei bumps into Asia, I don't think they have any other scene by themselves in the 6 or 7 chapters that I read. And at the same time, the whole time they're just oh, Issei loves Asia is this very big interaction. It's it doesn't feel like anything, and it just becomes a boring blur of fights that are dull because Issei just overpowers everything, and just the plot significant scenes that Issei is constantly because he's not even a devil in this, he's the Shinto demigod and stuff, so he's constantly saying oh, I have no reason to be here and stuff, but then they just work in a way to get the canon fights and stuff still be relevant. I just found this really boring, and it's gonna fall off my list. Next is Ice and Darkness by Racke, and this is more Naruto branded craziness from Racke, where Evangeline from the Gima also gets sealed into Naruto along with the Kyuubi, and basically Naruto decides to learn from the Kyuubi from Evangeline and become a super badass mage as well, and that also leads to knock-on effects with the rest of the team and how they grow as characters. This is just pure weapons grade crack. I really enjoy this, and if you enjoy ridiculous spectacle, you will too. This is going to stay on my list. Moving on to something that's not as ridiculous is The Tiny Closet and Its Occupant by In the Mix. And this is a Monsters Inc. crossover with Harry Potter, where Mike actually, after they find out after the end of the Monsters Inc. movie, when they're trying to get power via laughter and stuff, Mike goes and finds a small door that's really cramped and finds a kid with an interesting scar on his head. It's really an interesting scenario for the monsters after the events of the movie, and also it's just pretty melancholy but sweet character piece that's 2 interactions between Mike and Harry. I really think people should give this a look. I found it to be really really nice, and it's gonna stay on my list. Next is Oh Snap by Backwards Hazard, and this is a Fate Stay Night fic where, as a kid, Shiro stumbles across an anime, like a manga of Full Metal Alchemist, and decides to take some inspiration from that and becomes quite changed because of it. This is pure crack with that, while posing some other interesting ideas that could have paid off if the story had progressed, doesn't have that, but instead has a bunch of wacky scenes and ridiculousness that, again, are super enjoyable, fun on their own, even though it doesn't get very far into the story. I love this. It's going to stay on my list. Moving on now is Fate's Gamble by Lupine Horror. And this is a Harry Potter story where he, one day in the cupboard, wishes himself away to the Shapeless Isle, where he gets raised by the Gorgon sisters, Uriel and Stheno, and also ends up in and the only reason that happened is because Zeltrek from Fate Stay Night, threw out a bunch of his magic, so he gets touched, and so he gets raised by the Gorgon sisters and Zeltrek in Clock Tower, and then before, going back to Hogwarts, and then with all this change stuff. So this is an unapologetic OP Harry fic that spends a lot of time and words introducing and explaining things. Like, maybe I've just grown tired of this kind of style that's just over explaining and stuff, but I just didn't find myself engaged. Like, because I remember going back, like, I remember this fic in my head, and I was just like, oh yeah, I'm sure, like, I know it's an OP fic and all this stuff, and it's that kind of thing, but I was sure, like, I'm probably still going to be engaged, and I'm still going to like this a lot, but on the reread, I just found myself bored really fast, and I was constantly skipping, like, large paragraphs, and not really missing anything. The main problem with the story is it falls into the trap that most OP protagonist fics have, where all they do or make is, like, make the protagonist as powerful and or cool as possible, and have really no other draw or point of entertainment aside from, oh, see how cool this guy is, and see this power, and watch him, like, just stomp this guy with his esoteric amazing abilities. It's not done, like, that's the thing, it's like, it's all just about how cool they are and how much they lord their power over. There's no, and it's not done in, like, an entertainment way or, like, a funny way. It's all just like, I pull out this spell that you've never heard of and stuff, and instantly disappears, or whatever, like, things like that kind of stuff. And that just becomes boring. And the only other aspect here is, like, the harem aspect that Harry builds for himself, and that's basically built from all of the female acquaintances he keeps gathering around. But honestly, like, when I was reading it, like, it kind of felt more like collecting Pokemon than it did actually building relationships, because it was just like, oh, Lem is a succubus, like, familiar, and she's also a girl, so I'm gonna collect her into my harem, and that's it, done for that. Move on to the next girl. Hermione, I like her. She's gonna go into my harem. Like, it's like that kind of stuff where it's just like, it didn't feel like any of the relationships were being built up, and also as soon as the girl gets into the harem, they're forgotten about, and, like, you never really like, the relationships don't grow from there, and, like, that's because it's all the relationship focus is now onto the next girl to drag to the harem. So that was just freaking dull. I've said multiple times, I don't care about OP fics. Like, I don't have a problem against OP fics in general, but I believe mainly, like, that unless they've got some other thing going for it, it's not going to work just where OP character is OP and then that's amazing. That's not an engaging story, not something I really want to see again. Like, honestly, when you go OP, I've just found the best ways for it to really work and be engaging as a story I would want to come back to or read again is if you just go into comedy, because otherwise it just becomes really boring. If you're interested in this story, it is complete, and, like, the Fifth Grail War happens in the middle of, like, Harry still going to Hogwarts, and he goes there and deals with, Shiro and the girls and stuff, and there's a whole bunch of shit going on. and there is a sequel as well. So there's there's a lot here. So if you get into this and do enjoy this, you'll be well served. But I see no reason to ever come back to this, so it's gonna fall off my list. Sixth story for this video is Half the Man I Used to Be, but Twice the Man I Was by Unique. And this is an Avengers story where Tony got a little bit more damaged in the explosion in Afghanistan than he did in the actual MCU. And so it's a bit more of a thing where Tony lost his legs. So this isn't really a story as much as a collection of character scenes that jump around from timeline to time, jump around all over the timeline surrounding these characters. So it's more like a drabble collection than a coherent story in how that it floats just from idea to idea, even though all of these are in a, coherent, they do fit together and like as a coherent narrative. And that's not a bad thing because it allows the author to just jump to whatever scene they felt like writing at the time, and it's all just about the interpersonal relationships. Like Tony's injuries leads to a very different unveiling of who Iron Man is, and his identity is actually kept secret, which leads to interesting dynamics with the Avengers in this, post Avengers 2012 movie, where it's like we didn't know back then how the Avengers team would spine up. So it's like these are just what if like missions and a what if dynamic between them. I found this to be really interesting as a more somber and more serious take on Tony, and it's going to stay on my list. And the last story for this video is The Complications of a Vegas Wedding by That Guy You Knew. And this is based on a prompt where Harry, goes to Vegas and, gets the whole treatment of, goes to the casinos, gets drunk, gets married, all that stuff. The full prompt, I believe, is in the story, and it's one that I've done a lot. This incarnation doesn't really get anywhere, and basically falls into the fact of, like, a fun idea, which is the prompt, but like the person they picked for this one, which is Raven from Teen Titans, like it's an interesting idea that has a few good jokes, but it's not really something you need to it's not worth revisiting at all, and it's not really something that I would say you have to go look out for yourself either. If you stumbled across this, you probably wouldn't be too disappointed, but there's better versions of this out there that are reached further along, and I'm pretty sure I have a couple other versions of it on my list that you'll see. So yeah, this one is going to fall off my list. And that's it for this video. Fanfiction status time. I've now read 951 stories, and 448 of them have stayed on my list. So thank you so much for watching. As always, links to these stories will be in the description down below, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.